Some cards out there could get unbanned even without erratas, whereas some others literally have no chance. What's going on, guys? This is Miasin. So the other day, I was looking through the ban list, and I kind of thought, are there cards out there that literally just cannot get unbanned, at least without getting an errata that makes them completely unplayable? Considering the fact that erratas usually make cards pretty bad, not really, like, a little bit worse, like Imperial Order might be the only exception, honestly. Are there some cards out there that just are too strong to get unbanned in the current metagame? Considering the fact that, right now, the power creep is so insane, the majority of the cards printed in like 2005 are pretty much garbage. But yeah, I mean, before we get into not even a top 10, there are a few cards out there. Make sure you guys like and subscribe. Really motivates me a lot to keep making all these discussion videos, these reviews, etc. And yeah, let's jump right into it. Alright, so the number one monster that just cannot get unbanned without an errata is arguably the best main deck monster in the entire game, which is Magical Scientist. And a lot of people might not understand why this card is idiotic, but it's actually worse than Cyberstein. Cyberstein requires a 5,000 life point payment, and if it gets Veilered, well, you're screwed. Whereas Magical Scientist, it only requires you 1,000 life points payment, so if you get Veilered, you're not like one attack away from dying, and obviously if you're playing a bunch of cards to kind of ensure that it goes off, well, you can probably one card FTK your opponent, because being able to pay 7,000 life points to summon 7 extra deck monsters into your field is kinda dumb, if you ask me. So Magical Scientist with an errata to make it at least like once per turn or something, and even then it could still be pretty good. I really don't see how this card will ever get unbanned. The second one is actually a card that shouldn't even be on the ban list in the first place, because it belongs to a family of cards that are usually not even official Yu-Gi-Oh cards, as in it is literally explicitly said that you are not allowed to play them in duels, and that is Victory Dragon. So that was when Konami started creating those prize cards that say like, oh, if you defeat your opponent by reducing their life points to 0, you win the match. Victory Dragon is just kind of like a mistake, as in, since it was the first one to be like that, it is actually an official Yu-Gi-Oh card that can technically be played, but it kind of created a really stupid situation where people would scoop before dying just so they wouldn't lose the match and they would lose the duel itself. So a card like Victory Dragon can't exist, not necessarily just because it's powerful, because yeah, you can argue that stealing a game 2 when you're only a game 1 is kind of unfair, kind of ruins the integrity of the game. Number 3 is what a lot of people consider to be the best extra deck monster in the entire game of Yu-Gi-Oh, and that is number 16, Shockmaster. If you've been playing the game for a while, you would definitely agree with me. Shockmaster is idiotic. I mean, you go first, you call monstrous spells or traps, and your opponent might just have to pass turn there. It's a lingering effect, so there's nothing you can do about it. It's not just one passive negate. That's not what the card is. And even if you kaiju the card, it does nothing. You're still under the Shockmaster lingering condition, so you can't do anything. Regardless of how good your hand is, you might never be able to play a single card from your hand. It's so stupid that a card like that ever existed, and to think that a card like that could ever get banned? No thank you, there's no way Shockmaster can come back. Number 4 is a continuous spell card, and just by saying that, I think you should already have a good idea of what card it is. Card of Safe Return. I mean, come on, this card is so stupid. Every single time you revive back a monster from your grave, draw 1 card. And now once per turn, and I don't know about that. Yeah, I mean, even with an errata to make it once per turn, it would actually be fair. Just because, if it's like a hard once per turn, if it's a soft once per turn, then yeah, you do get residual card advantage really fast, but it would be kind of similar to a supply squad or something like that, where like every time a monster gets destroyed, you draw 1 card. So I think if it is kind of similar to that, could kind of be fair, but I don't know, card of Safe Return without an errata, you can easily draw over 5 cards in one single turn, and that's actually by being nice. I think if you're playing a deck that is dedicated to using card of Safe Return, you could genuinely draw your whole deck and dig for Exodia, because there are some infinite loops in the graveyard, featuring another pretty stupid card in the form of Phoenician Cluster Amaryllis, and Samsara Lotus, which are 2 other cards that are kinda dumb, but at the same time they do require other cards, so single-handedly they aren't unfair, but Curve Safe Return literally single-handedly is unfair. I had another spell card, and that one's actually pretty funny. It's Cold Wave. It's jokes because when I was a kid, I actually used to play this with my friends, and we didn't actually think that the card was too good because we weren't using like too many spells and traps. We were kind of newbie, so we're just going like, I don't know, normal summon legend, the mystical genie of the lamp attack. Like, oh, this card's insane. How am I gonna out it? Well, I'm just gonna stall by setting Giant Soldier of Stone, and then next turn we tribute for Summon Skull. So Cold Wave for us as kids, kind of bad, but right now in 2021, Cold Wave is like activate OTK game. 5 trap cards, Book of Moon with other traps. I don't even need Red Reboot. You're dead. Literally, Cold Wave is kind of unfair. It prevents your opponent from breaking your board, it prevents your opponent from stopping you when you're trying to kill them. It randomly prevents like so many just insane cards that are played in everyone's deck, so a card like Cold Wave is way too good. The next one is actually pretty funny. It's Last Will. Now, I don't know if I remember the effect correctly. I think it's like the turn a monster is sent from like your field to the graveyard, special summon one monster from your deck with like 1500 or less attack. Again, when I was a kid, I thought this card was garbage because it was a spell and not a trap, and the majority of the time when my monsters left the field or like were sent to the grave, whatever, it was during my opponent's turn when they would get destroyed by battle. But now if you're just like link summoning or literally anything, even destroying your own cards, you can activate Last Will, summon literally anything from your deck. The effect is non-negated, so you can randomly summon like Multi-Faker from your deck turn 1 with like Altergeist and stuff like that. You can, Jesus, I don't even want to actually get into what kind of crazy shenanigans Last Will can do, but the possibilities are endless. This next one is very similar to a trap card that was also banned. They literally have the same effect, and that is Dimension Fusion. Pay 2000 life points, both players summon as many banished cards as possible. So you can probably tell that if you're going first and you're playing a deck that banishes a lot, you can literally soul charge for 5 by paying 2000 life points. Soul charge from the banished. And if you're going first, like I said, your opponent doesn't really have anything in the banished, so it's kind of like you lose and I just go +5. So I don't think if soul charge is banned, this card can exist. Okay, the next two cards are also very similar, but at the same time, they're broken for different reasons in a way. Pot of Greed and Graceful Charity. Pot of Greed is unfair regardless of what kind of deck you're using it in, and Graceful Charity, it's always very good, but it becomes tier 0 and actually better than Pot of Greed when you're playing a deck that actually generates advantage when the cards are discarded. So for example, a card like Graceful Charity in Dark World is actually better than Pot of Greed in Dark World because you draw 3 cards and then you discard 2 Dark Worlds to revive back 2 monsters, and I don't really see how you went neg by discarding 2 cards. If anything, you actually drew 1 extra card. Yeah, instead of drawing just 2, you draw 3, and then, yeah. Graceful Charity, I don't know, it's a little too good. I actually know that Konami has also done, I don't want to say like revamps of the card, but like some archetype locked Graceful Charity versions, like Sylvan Charity and I think not Danger Zone. The other spell cards that absolutely cannot get unbanned are cards that, people complain about worse. So imagine if these cards existed, and that is the Century and Delinquent Duo. Delinquent Duo actually is a pretty interesting one because it makes your opponent lose 2 cards, but it is actually considered to be kind of the worst out of the 3 in a way, only because you don't choose yourself. Whereas a card like Forceful Century, it's unfair because you don't even pay anything and you don't make your opponent discard anything. Your opponent has to shuffle it back into the deck. So there's no form of advantage your opponent can have. And in Confiscation, you do pay 1000, even though I don't think that matters. And you look at your opponent's hand and make them discard 1 card. It's basically Tactic Talents effect, but without having to rely on your opponent actually using a monster effect in the first place. If you could play the card, you obviously would be playing the card regardless of what kind of deck you're playing. Literally, if you go first and activate like Delinquent Duel plus Forceful Century and Confiscation all 3 in 1 turn, your opponent has 1 card and then draws a second one for turn. And obviously, in 2021, you only need 1 card to pop off, so you know for a fact that your opponent will not have hand traps, and you can pretty much just demolish him from there. Okay, now we're getting into the trap cards right now, and honestly, trap cards just in general in Yu-Gi-Oh! Are a bit less degenerate, and they're less like unfair and overwhelming than spell cards. Spell cards are like the biggest unfair tier 0 cards out there, and I know, by the way, that I've missed a lot of spell cards, so that's why I'm going to ask you guys to leave a comment including all the spell cards that are way too good in your opinion. Like a Snatch Steal is just another one of those examples where it literally came back for like 1 format, and then Konami was like, yeah, no, forget it, the card's way too good, it's searchable, blah blah blah. But yeah, for the trap cards, cards. Royal Oppression... Not really fair, huh? Vanity's Emptiness is also super unfair. The only reason why I don't really want to talk about Vanity's Emptiness as much is because the OCG has the card, and I kind of had that same mentality for Topologic Gumblar Dragon in the extra deck lineup in the monsters, because the OCG had Topologic Gumblar for way longer than we do, and Summon Sorceress is also another card that they had in conjunction with Needle Fiber and Firewall, whereas we never had Summon Sorceress with Needle Fiber coexisting in one format. But yeah, Royal Oppression, the card is just way too good because you get to constantly negate summons, negate effects that would summon monsters, so it's very similar to Vanity's Emptiness, but it is actually kind of one-sided because the opponent can also use your own Royal Oppression to negate you, but still unfair nonetheless. And last, but also kind of least in a way-ish, this trap card is not a good card. It's just a card that can't get unbanned because it ruins literally everything that Konami has been trying to kind of just prevent in Yu-Gi-Oh! And that card is Self-Destruction Button. This card is really bad and toxic for the game because it doesn't really help the games, like the tournaments, go smoother at all. It creates more draws because both players' life points hit 0 at the same time, and you don't want that to happen under literally any circumstances. If you're on a game 2 or whatever, then yeah, sure, someone is going to be winning, and that kind of is unfair in a way. It's like an Exodia that you can't really control. Like, yeah, it's a trap card. If you don't have the negate, well, you lose. I have the match, and it's just it's a really stupid way to win. But if you're on a game 1 and you do something like that, or like on a game 3 in time, Self-Destruction Button is really toxic because by creating more draws, there's also more kind of collusion and corruption in Yu-Gi-Oh! Just in general. The tournaments are never, like I said, going to run smooth with like so many people being like X2 and not being able to top and stuff like that. So Self-Destruction Button, yeah, it just can't come back. Not because it's a powerful card, like I said, but because it actually just ruins Yu-Gi-Oh! So I don't know what you guys actually think of this list of cards that can't get unbanned. Definitely let me know your thoughts in the comment section below. I know there's so many others that just cannot get unbanned, but I didn't want this video to include like 50 billion cards. So yeah, let me know your thoughts in the comment section below. Don't forget to like and subscribe, and I'll see you guys next time. Peace.